So you're done with D&D, you're looking for something a little different, and you're looking for something that feels a little more deadly and maybe is a little darker, but still has really cool character advancement systems and makes your character feel very powerful. Boy, do I have a game for you. Today, we're reviewing Shadow of the Demon Lord. Welcome back to the channel. I am Sacred, and this is the Sacred Art of Gaming, where we like to talk about tabletop gaming and sometimes review very dark, ghastly, gory looking books. Like Shadow of the Demon Lord. Boy, that glare is terrible. This is this is the book with no glare. Alright, so how I like to do my reviews, I like to keep things as analog. I like to keep things as analog as possible, and I also like to go through the contents of the book. So we'll talk about the physical book, because that is a thing. We're going to talk about the contents of the book, and then we're also going to talk about how it applies to solo play, because that is something that I'm always going to kind of keep in mind. Now, as far as the build of the book, pretty solid. I would say this is on par with like every 5th edition book. The binding is great. The outside has that gloss, which I mean is okay. And then, as you can see, there's quite a bit here. The layout is very similar with that dual like pillar. There's probably a better way to say that. 2 like vertical sections on each page, which is kind of, I feel like, the standard for most big RPGs. But yeah, nothing bad to say about it, nothing amazing to say about it other than the art. I love the art in this, but I also really like dark stuff. So keep that in mind if you are bothered by stuff like grotesque demons and devils and undead. This game really dives into that quite a bit. So yeah, there's that. Now, I think what we should talk about first is we'll start with PC creation. We'll start with PC creation because that's kind of like what the book starts with. So you do have a certain level of ancestries that you can start with, a little different than probably what you're used to, but there are other books that expand upon this, as you might imagine. So you have, of course, your humans, you have your changelings, you have clockworks, that one's interesting, dwarves, goblins, and orcs. Yeah, so the clockworks are, as you'd imagine, clockwork style automatons. Similar to D&D, you do get some benefits from your different ancestries. Something that I think is expanded here, though, that I personally think is better than in like default 5th edition. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I love all of this. I love all of this background, personality, religion, age, build. I feel like one of the strong suits of this book and this game, for solo but also in general, they give you so much to build an interesting character with. And I love that, regardless of if you're playing this specific setting or not. There's so many like cool and interesting things that you can go off of for your character, especially when you start getting into some of the weird ones. So let's go to like the dwarf, goblin. Did we pass our buddy, the clockwork? So yeah, you can roll on the back. There's actually less tables for the clockwork, but like your soul came from hell. Start the game with 1d3 corruption for the clockwork. Or you were made to be a scribe. You know how to read and write the common tongue. Okay. You built a lasting monument in your community. You were stolen from the workshop where you were made and lived as a slave. Or goblins captured you and almost took you apart and for scrap materials. You have replaced your missing components with bits of wood, old weapons, and other rubbish. Then you also have like your personality. You hate living things, you're terrified of becoming dormant, etc. All right, so those are your ancestries. Something to note about the ancestries, which we'll kind of get into with advancement, you get a level up at a certain point for your ancestry, which is pretty cool. Now let's go to professions. This is another layer on top of your character. So you've got academic, common, criminal, martial, religious, or wilderness professions. So just additional layers, and a lot of characters have like 2 or 3 of these. So you could be like, maybe you studied astrology, but you were also a beggar, and then you were also an exile. And I really enjoy taking those things and piecing them together into a coherent character. It's a lot of fun. Interesting things, similar to like 13th Age, and I think D&D has a little bit of this actually. May not be in the default book, but it's in one of the books. And I always love these, and there's multiple, so you've got, 6 of these. So you roll a d6 to figure out which table, and then each one has a d20, and next thing you know, you have a tiny glass cage, or a small keg of beer, or a deck of fortune teller cards. And then you can really dive into the background of your character as to why they have that. Personality traits. I love this. I do find that it tends to conflict with my character a lot of times with what he's actually been doing, so I have to kind of be creative about that. But you could have an idealistic and a sullen character. So you basically roll a d20 and you have a positive and a negative trait that comes with that. You could roll 2 d20s, or you could just roll 1 d20 and just have them kind of match each other, so to speak. I don't know that they have to, but like if you're noble, then you're unfriendly. If you're kind, then you're thoughtless. If you're imaginative, then you're surly, helpful, sarcastic, gracious, quarrelsome, generous, rude. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe rolling 2 d20s, but I mean, you still may end up in the same position. Now here's the advancement. I do want to come back to this after, but there is the level where expert, novice, ancestry. So level 4, you get an additional level up based on your specific ancestry, which is interesting. Now, character creation is amazing. I don't like that they go from all of that to then playing the game, because is it not natural to go to the classes next, which is what we'll do. The paths, they call them, the novice paths. And in this game, you have a lot of options and choices, to include 4. Magician, priest, rogue, and warrior. And you might be thinking, sacred. What in the damn hell? 4 options? What is this crap? This game does a very similar thing that the age system does, although I think this does it better. It is probably my favorite advancement system, and that is that, as you can see, you get your level up at 2, 5, and 8, in addition to 1, of course, and then you have some more charts that you can roll on for your character to kind of build them out and expand on them a little bit. Now where this gets interesting is, let's say I'm a rogue, you're a rogue, we're kind of the same rogue for the most part other than the table, until we hit level 3. Level 3, and this is where we're going to go back to that advancement piece, this is where you get your expert paths. Now your expert paths, you kind of have 4 general paths, and that is the paths of faith, the paths of power, the paths of trickery, and the paths of war. These generally align to those 4 novice paths that you start with, but you don't have to stick with them. You could start as a warrior and then try and become an assassin. There's nothing that stops you from doing that. And I love this. I love this because then this is giving you so many cool options. And then this gives you more tables based on all of these cool options. But wait, I say, there is still more, because after the expert levels, you then go into master paths. Now the master paths, you get these at level 7, and then you get your second one at level 10, as we saw for our experts, we get them at 3, 6, and 9. You might see what's kind of happening here. And then something that I really love is the master story development and the choose a quest and figuring out, like, there's some sample quests here. So it's not as simple as just like, oh, I hit the appropriate level and now I just have the abilities. No, you should earn it by going on a quest. Now we have 2 general paths here, magic or skill. But within each one of those, there are, I think I wrote this down somewhere, 32. So each one of these, there's 32 magic, 32 skill, for a total of 64. So yeah, there's a lot of, like, especially when you're getting to this level, there are so many cool things that you can do. You can be like a healer, a hexer, a hydromancer, a runesmith, and you still have those other abilities, but you're just like really, you're becoming more of an expert in a very specific thing. On the skill side, we have things like acrobat, cavalier, infiltrator, myrmidon, to go against what I said. You have the jack of all trades. And yeah, these, you go and you get these abilities now too. So this is a little, I don't know if crunchy is the right word, but there is a decent amount of heft to your character, especially if you're getting to this level. There are a good amount of abilities which can be good or bad depending on how many things you feel like you want to juggle. Now let's go back to that chart that we were talking about now that we walked that down, that shows the advancement. So this breaks it down pretty good. Level 1, novice. Level 2, novice. Level 3, expert. Level 4, ancestry. Level 5, novice again. Level 6, expert. Level 7, master. 8, novice. 9, expert. 10, master. So even when you move on from your novice stuff, you're still bringing in those abilities. So you will always have, let's say you start as a warrior, you will continue to build that warrior stuff. And then you will continue to build expert, and then you will continue to build master, and they can kind of blend together into some crazy amalgamation of a character that is unique to you. And I love that. There are also alternative rules to doing 2 expert paths instead of a master path. So that is an option. All right, now let's go to the system. I do feel weird talking about, it's always unclear to me what should be first, the system or the character creation, because sometimes the character creation and the system, they feed into each other. But this is just what we did. So now, playing the game. So with this, similar to D&D, roll 20, you roll a d20, roll over system, and you'll add mods. And instead of the advantage and disadvantage system, you're going to have boons and banes, which sounds a lot like Dragonbane, which is different, but maybe I shouldn't even say that because that's going to confuse things more, because that's a roll under system. But boons and banes are different in this. The boons and banes are not an additional d20, it is a d6, and you can roll, like, they do stack. So say, for example, I'm rolling my strength, and I have a +1 to my strength. I roll a d20. Let's say I roll a 10, so that's an 11. Let's say I had a boon because I'm so much stronger than the thing that I'm trying to overpower, and also I have a boon because my ally just buffed me, but I also have a bane because I have a nail in my foot. So let's say, let's throw one more boon in there. I have another boon because another character is helping me physically. All right, so that's 3 boons, 1 bane. That 1 bane cancels out one of the boons, but I'm still rolling 2 boons. It's not just a flat, like, you have advantage or disadvantage and that's it. So what's gonna happen is I roll the d20, I roll the 10, I get a +1 from my mod, and then I roll 2 d6s. Because we're rolling boons, I'm going to take the higher. If I were rolling banes, I'd be taking the lower. So let's say I roll those 2. 1 is a 3, 1 is a 5. I will take the 5. So 10 plus 1 is 11, plus 5 is 16. 16 is what I have. Pretty solid system. One of my favorites, for sure. In this game, you do have less to deal with stat-wise. You're going to have strength, agility, intellect, and willpower. And then they have skills or stats that are derived from them. So for strength, it's going to be your health. For your defense, it'll be agility. For your intellect, that'll be tied to perception, which is a little different. And then for your will, insanity is tied to that. So you can go insane in this game because it is dark and things are crazy. Another stat that's worth mentioning is power. And this is basically going to be spell slots, which I don't love that, but I don't know. It's okay. It's very similar to spell slots. Does it have it on the mage here? Probably. A little bit of a spoiler for the magic section, but I figured I'd show it while it's brought up. So if you have 0 power, you just have a 1-0 level. That's like a cantrip, I guess. But if you're 1, you have 2 zeros and 1 1. If you have 2 power, you have 3 0, 2 1, and 1 2, etc., etc., etc. You follow the chart. All right. A couple other things that are interesting is there's like a corruption mechanic. So if you are doing evil things in this game, which can happen, there is corruption that can be applied to your character, and there are effects to that, and there are also ways to atone for it too, via like quests, which is pretty interesting. Something that's also interesting about the game is that the healing rate is actually a flat number. And I think maybe it's worth showing a character sheet. I think we've got one in the back here. There are a lot of like satanic and pentagram type stuff if that bothers you, another thing to mention. Because they do also have your size, your speed, there's your defense, corruption, insanity, perception, power, how much damage you've taken. Yeah, your healing rate would just be a flat number. So anytime you roll for your healing rate, a lot of characters have like some type of recovery for that. For example, the rogue can recover, but then also move half of their movement speed, and also avoid being like hit from opportunity attacks, which is a little different from what other characters might have. Whereas a warrior might just heal. They must have a boot. I think it's, I don't know. I'd have to look, but it's different per different characters. Somewhat surprisingly, to me anyways, in this, the rules section, which the rules are going to be, man, I hate to keep comparing it to D&D, but there's a lot of similarities between D&D and this game, and rightfully so. I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning. This game is by Robert Schwab, and it is amazing. There's also Shadow of the Weird Wizard that is also out now, which is lighter than this game. Lighter in terms of it's not as dark. It's not as dark. I don't actually own that game yet, but I will. I promise you that. So here's the things that happen when you go mad. You have your mark of darkness. Okay, great. The thing I wanted to show, all the different afflictions and stuff, but the thing I want to show off is they actually have these rules here for social conflicts, which I think is really cool, and breaks it down by if you're trying to befriend them, deceive them, intimidate them, persuade them, or taunt them. I thought that was worth mentioning because, honestly, looking at the book, you wouldn't think those rules would be in there. I would be remiss if I did not mention the difference between fast turns and slow turns in this game, because this is different from D&D. As you can see, if you're taking a fast turn, you can use an action or move. You cannot do both. And you're choosing to do this to guarantee, hopefully, that you're going faster than the enemy. Now, you can take a slow turn to use both an action and move up to its speed, and it can use an action any point during that move. So that kind of adds an interesting fast turn versus slow turn. It kind of adds a bit of like player agency to the initiative, which I think is really cool. I don't know if I would say it's like the best way to do things or not, but it's an interesting way to do things. And I dig that. A lot of your other, triggered actions help. Damage is similar to what you would expect in attacking. Rolling strength, rolling agility if it's a finesse weapon, rolling agility if you're shooting a bow, rolling intellect or will if your magic style is tied to one or the other. Now, let's go back to magic, because magic is also a part of this game that I really love and I think is worth mentioning. in addition to your normal character building that we've already discussed between novice, expert, master, and all of your background stuff, you also have these cool traditions, and it's broken up by attribute here for your intellect or will if you're a magic user. So a ton of options here: arcana, battle, conjuration, curse, divination, enchantment, forbidden, illusion, necromancy, protection, rune, shadow, technomancy, teleportation, time, and then will. They have theirs as well: fire, earth, destruction, storm, transformation, water. And it may not be the things that you would normally expect on one side or the other. So yeah, that's a really cool breakdown. I love it. And I also love that the magic is, I love the way it's broken down. There's also two forbidden magics that are worth mentioning. Curse and, is it necromancy? Yeah, curse and necromancy are like dark magic traditions. So if you wanted to be like a dark mage, you could. But yeah, these are really solid and also like so much easier to describe to someone, in my humble opinion. You got a brand new player and you're like, oh, do you wanna be a it's been so long since I played D&D, I'm struggling to think of the magic schools. Do you want to do like divination magic? And they're like, what the? Divination may be an easier one to deal with. But there are, do I need to break out a book? Can confirm, holding both of them side by side, they do feel very similar. Okay, yeah, so here we go. In D&D, and you got a brand new player, and you're like, oh, do you want to do abjuration spells or magic? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you want to do evocation spells? Is that the type of wizard that you want to be? And they're going to be like, I don't know, dude. I thought I wanted to play magic. You're making me feel like I don't want to now. But if I said things like rune, shadow, storm, song, teleportation, technomancy, the toughest one out of those is what? Technomancy and teleportation. Most people could probably make the mental leap to figure those out. And then we don't have a like insane amount of spells to deal with where there's like 100 different like YouTube videos saying, don't use this spell, 90% of wizards make this mistake, you should only be using this spell. Spoiler, it's fireball. Just fireball everything. That's really everyone should just be throwing fireballs. This feels not necessarily balanced, but I love that about the game. Not just for magic, but for character creation in general. There are so many crazy buttons and levers that you can twist and bop and pull to make your character, and it feels interesting, and it feels like you have a lot of fun things that you can do without it being obvious that something is just shit. Now, moving on, we have the setting, which, as you would imagine, is pretty dark. It's pretty dark. Now, something I would like to note for me, so you're aware, I really like a setting whenever the setting and the mechanics are deeply intertwined with each other. So much so that, like, when you're playing the game, regardless of reading the setting section, you're learning about the setting just by playing. And I love that. Does this game do that? Not really. Is the setting still really cool? It is. It is a cool setting, but it's just what separates a game like this versus something that I would consider where those two things are deeply intertwined. Like, what's a good example? Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark, although can you rip the system out and apply it to other stuff? Sure, but there are just so many things in Blades in the Dark that it teaches you so much about that world. For this, I mean, it's really just like the insanity and the corruption, I guess, but that could still be like Call Cthulhu, right? But yeah, is there a cool world here with a lot of cool stuff that you could really dive into? Yes, yeah, there absolutely is. There's all of these kingdoms and lands and people and confederacies that you can really dive into. There is one thing that I do want to note, though, that if you were to take nothing from this, this is the thing I would take. This is the thing that I do take from the setting, and I think we actually passed it. Or is it here? Okay, the thing I was looking for actually wasn't even in the settings section. It's actually in the GM section, which is also solid. It is good, but it is, like, I would say standard. I didn't necessarily get anything that like blew my socks off of this specific book. The Forbidden Rules book, though, that I think has a unicorn on it, that book does have some cool rules that allows you to change the game up quite a bit and is especially helpful for solo play for me. But I digress. The thing that I wanted to point out is the shadow of the Demon Lord. And what this is doing is this, similar to something like Morkborg, the apocalypse is upon us. And this is showing the impending doom that is coming, and for your specific game, the type of things that are happening. So it could be something like Curse of the Beastmen or the Restless Dead. And this is, this gives you a looming presence for your game of doom. And it's optional, you don't have to use the shadow, but I do recommend it if you want to lean into the whole dark portion of the game. And all of these have like a cool breakdown and a game effect. Now the GM section itself, like I said, pretty solid, and there are some cool tables in here that you can use. Things like tables and traps, terrain and movement, weather. So it's not necessarily like all in one place that would be super easy and convenient, but it does exist. Some cool story structure stuff here. All right, I don't want to waste too much time on that, but yeah, this is where you thought things were dark before. Ooh, enchanted object table. I do love that. Ooh, look at all that. Lastly, we're going to talk about, well, second to lastly, because we want to talk about solo, but the Bestiary. The Bestiary, there's some really cool beasts in here, and something that I do enjoy, although I'm conflicted on, is the creature difficulty table. So they let you know, like, if you're starting out, novice, expert, master, and they give you these like difficulty modifiers. I would prefer if they skipped that step entirely and then just straight up told you, hey, novice for this or expert for this, or 2 of these would equal expert. And these stat blocks are very reasonable. I don't like being overwhelmed by a massive stat block. I like having something that's pretty tight, but gives me a little bit of flavor that I can work with. And I would say this falls within that. There's the difficulty, and without sending anything too grotesque, because there are some dark things in here. Yeah, you got quite a decent demonic bestiary, and the art is so good. But something that I really love is that towards the back here, oh god, I don't want to show you that, that's too dark. Edit that out if it showed it. You can customize creatures too, which is cool. But I love this. Creatures by difficulty makes this very easy to break things down, give you an idea as to like what monsters you should be facing at what level. Am I more in the school of like the monster is the monster and you deal with them or you don't? Yeah, I kind of am, but this game is built in a way similar to 5th edition where you will get absolutely murked if you are going against a bone machine and you are level 1. And I suppose you can run, but a lot of your players, in most instances, they'll have to learn in this game that they should run. But in 5e, people don't run very often. All right, and that is the book. Yeah, I think that is everything. No other appendixes or anything like that. Now, for solo play, do I recommend this game for solo play? It's a tough one. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. If you are someone who's looking for more, you're looking for more to sink your teeth into, especially from a character creation perspective, this game is great. Like, I honestly love soloing this, and you would think this is really not the style of game that you would think I would enjoy solo playing, because I tend to lean more into the light games when it comes to solo play. But with this and that Forbidden Rules book, between those two things, I was able to ditch a lot of the stuff that I typically avoid anyways, like movement distances and distances for like ranged weapons and stuff. I prefer to make things like short, medium, or whatever. They're either in melee range or they're not. I try to simplify those things as much as possible. You could have all the roles be player facing. All of that stuff is covered in that book that I have digitally but not physically. So if you're a brand new solo player, or you just don't like dark fantasy, dark demonic, potentially borderline satanic type stuff, yeah, this book will probably bother you. There's some dark stuff in here. Nothing that, you're gonna throw up over, I don't think, but there's definitely some rough stuff in here. I think, to give you an example without showing it to you, one of the things that definitely I'm not really bothered by much, but when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, it was like a puddle of faces that are stitched together, and that's like one of the monsters. It's just like faces that are just torn off like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they're still like alive, and the eyes are moving and stuff, and they're just stitched together, and they're almost moving like an amoeba over like stone walkway, and it is very unsettling. But yeah, is this for the faint of heart? No. Is this kind of more on the crunchy side for solo play? Yes. But does it make for a lot of fun, especially for character creation, if you are like cool with getting over that hump? Absolutely. And there are tables in here that can support you with that. You're not going to be able to do it just 100% off of this. You will need other tables, because this is not built for solo play necessarily, but can it be done? Absolutely. This is actually one of the first games that I ended up solo playing, so I didn't really have a ton of solo play experience, and I was actually enjoying it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Shadow of the Demon Lord, what you think of Shadow of the Weird Wizard, because I don't have that one yet. Do you recommend it? I want to know. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube things if you're digging the content. And I will see you in the next one as we continue to explore the sacred art of gaming together. Thanks for watching.